All right, U.S. News and World Report contributor Ashley Pratte. We've got campusreform.org media director Cabot Phillips and former Bush 43 deputy assistant Brad Blakeman. Brad, to you on this concern that more countries are not following suit to join us setting up their own embassies in Israel, in Jerusalem, for fear that it's going to cause a bigger ruckus. What do you make of that?
Shame on them. We should take note of the countries that stood with Israel and stood with America today on this historic day, and we should also take note of those who are absent.
Well, there are three of them: Guatemala, Paraguay, and the United States.
Yeah, what a shame, what a lost opportunity. The fact of the matter is the United States leads even when it's not popular, quote unquote, with others. That's what America does. And unfortunately, others will come kicking and screaming. Eventually, over time, they will be pretty much forced to do the right thing. The United States has done something that is not only in our interest, it's in the interest of Israel, it's in the interest of peace.
Ashley, what do you think?
I think today is a cause for celebration. I think it's a historic day, but it's also a cause for somewhat of a bit of concern. And this is due to the violence that's happening right along the border there. And I think a lot of this comes on the heels of, the U.S. withdrawing from the Iran deal and the fact that there are significant tensions between Israel and Iran. And then you have the Syria factor involved as well. I really do think this is something we need to keep a watch on, because I don't think that these violence protests, these outbreaks that we're seeing, these deadly attacks that are happening, I think that these will continue for some time, even though this was a necessary step and a way forward to recognize reality there in Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
This has been, and Cabot, you and I were chatting during the break, but a lot of presidents in the past have proposed this and all, but they would always pull it or stop it or prevent it once they became president because, well, at that time was not the time. This president urged much the same. The Palestinians who are furious about this have been arguing, well, there go our shot when we eventually get a state of our own to put the capital in East Jerusalem. So they're even angrier.
Well, let's remind ourselves who Israel is surrounded by. Terrorist nations that have, in many cases, in their official charters, desires to wipe Israel off the face of the map. These are not people coming and negotiating in goodwill. These are people who have committed themselves to violence, in many cases terrorism, to push their means. And I think for the United States to not act on sound policy because we are afraid of those people escalating violence is essentially allowing our foreign policy decisions to be based on being held hostage by these nations. I think it's the right thing. And to kind of look at it from a different angle, if Russia went to the rest of the country, the rest of the world, and said, we're mad at the United States, don't recognize their capital in D.C., move your embassies to New York City, and other countries started moving their embassies to New York City at the request of outside nations, we'd be furious. We'd be offended at every nation that did so. And so I think looking at it from that angle, Israel, it's the right move to respect their sovereignty and where they claim is their capital.
All right, let me switch gears here a little, guys. Over the weekend on my live show on Fox News, we got into this issue of the upcoming North Korea negotiations, where one liberal commentator went out of the way, I thought beyond what would typically be the case, to say that she actually trusts the North Korean leader more than President Trump. I want you to take a look. You trust Kim Jong-un more than the president?
It's scary at this moment.
Really?
I'm not quite sure who to trust.
Right. That's a Fox alert that you buried there, that you trust the North Korean leader more than Donald Trump.
I
know you're liberal, but you're not clueless, right?
Well, I'm just saying, how does this leader trust this leader? We have two leaders that are unstable and unpredictable.
See, this is your Trump hatred now out of control.
It's not out of control. I'm just saying
he's
unpredictable. He's so unpredictable.
All right. Kevin?
People are in a constant competition on the left to see who can oppose President Trump in the most extreme ways, because it almost gives them credence on their side to show that they're the most dedicated member of the resistance. They're now going to side with murderous dictators over the duly elected president of our nation.
Ashley, to be fair to Kat here on that said, that's why I kind of raised my eyebrows, and more than that, because I did that perplexed anchor thing. But one of the things I did notice is that, boy, you must have a very cynical view of the president, that you think that he is less trustworthy than the North Korean leader, but she based it on the fact that he has lied a number of times, that he's dialed back things he said, that personnel he said he would keep and he didn't, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So he has a history of fooling her, and so she's not going to be fooled again. What do you say?
Well, look, he does have a history, I'm sure of this, because I've said it multiple times on air, of some reckless, rash, and sometimes untruthful behavior. But at the same time, Neil, I am speaking as a never-Trump Republican who can at least say in this situation the release of the 3 hostages was a good thing, and that whatever he's doing with North Korea clearly worked. What I will say, though, is we should be a little bit concerned about North Korea's willingness to play in the sandbox with us, and that maybe we should be a little bit more diplomatic when it comes to our relations with them. But as of right now, things are okay. So I understand her unease with the way in which he chooses to conduct himself as the President of the United States. But at the same time, I mean, we should never be trusting North Korea here.
What do you make of that, Brad? I mean, she is just putting voice to a cynicism that's out there on a lot of people who said this president could get hoodwinked on a deal, and that he can't be relied to keep his end of the bargain. What do you make of that?
I think it's patently unpatriotic, rooting against America. The fact is, Donald Trump has been able, with results, to do things that other presidents have been stymied for decades. The fact that the North and South are talking to one another, the fact that they've agreed unilaterally to stop their testing, that the President of the United States is going to meet the North Korean outside his country. The guy never leaves his country. Look at, not one Democrat showed up today for the opening of the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. It's a resistance movement that is rooting against America. It's unbelievable. Look, it's results. Do you agree with the president moving the embassy to Jerusalem and taking that off the table? Do you agree of the historic breakthroughs that have been made in North Korea? You've got to answer yes to those. Now, these are promises of future successes, but at least progress is being made.
All right, and we'll see what progress is made. Less than a month to go. Guys, thank you all very, very much.